Sandwich Loaf, time again. So I've had to think about what I'm going to do, and I've got three things I want to try this week. I've made a slightly bigger batch of bread. So where are the measurements? So I normally do a kilo of flour and then 600 grams worth of starter, whereas this week I'm doing a total of 1.5 kilos of flour and 915 grams of water, and that includes all the starter. So it's quite more. So it's going to be about 800 grams per loaf. I just want to make them a little bit bigger, and the dough's not cold, so it's been in the fridge fermenting. It's quite warm at the moment, so it proved really quickly. So it's been in the fridge, so it proved kind of like within 8 hours, whereas normally it takes about between 12 and 15, maybe something like 16 hours to kind of to prove. But it was done in like 6, so because of the hot weather. I've had it in the fridge overnight, and I've taken it out of the fridge just to kind of get it back to a dip more kind of like room temperature, the dough. So that's a change. And what else was I going to do? Yeah, bloody flies. It's that time of year again. I'm going to have to pause. Just ignore the fly. So, and then I kind of, because I've got it to a room temperature, it might freeze, it might prove for the second time a little bit better in the fridge, and I'll have to take it out as early. Although I did kind of want to, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. My other idea was to kind of rise it in, actually we'll do that, we'll do it twice, we'll do it 2 ways. That's what we'll do. Okay, so I'm going to prove, I'm going to put 2 in the fridge, I'm going to have 1 out, and I'm going to let it prove at room temperature, see how long it takes, and then we'll bake it today, and then we'll bake the other 2 tomorrow. So that's what I'm going to do. That probably makes no sense to anyone other than myself. So it's a bit sticky. I'll probably put a little bit too much water in the dough, but it'll be fine. So a little bit of flour down. It's going to be more stickier. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to kind of work with. So tease it out. I don't think it really matters about snapping the gluten strands, because it's a kneaded dough. So it's not as if there's the folding method of with dough, and so you don't actually knead it. You kind of, yeah, I can't describe it. So, but I don't think that's just quite as robust if you do the folding method. I use the kneading method, which is kind of what I want. So, no, I just stopped talking then, and then that over there, like that. Get a bit of tension in that way, and then yeah. So yeah, if you knead bread, it's a little bit different than if the folding method of folding and stretching method of kneading dough. So that'll be like that, and then I've got a feeling it's going to stick. It's going to stick because it's a slightly wetter dough mixture, and because it's warmer. So that's kind of how I've seen them do it. So we're creating tension in the dough. That's the bottom. There. I've got those lines, but not to worry. And then oil tin. Oil tin. Oh yeah, and I was going to cook, instead of them all on one shelf, I was going to cook them individually. So that's the first one. Let's see if we can do a better job with this second one. you've just got to get used to handling sticky dough. I don't know, I thought it'd be an impossible thing to kind of like learn how to handle a sticky dough when I first started baking bread again. But it's just something you get used to. You learn how to pick it up. There's a bit of a popular misconception that chefs have got hands that can tolerate more heat. It's more a case of getting used to the temperature, so you just kind of ignore it. It's not that your hands become hardened, and you also learn how to pick things up, so you don't grab things hard and get a strong grip on things. You kind of touch things with the least amount of grip as possible, and then it doesn't kind of burn. So if you grab on something hard and tight, a lot more of your hand touches the hot, and you'd burn yourself. But you kind of grip things a little bit loosely. But anyway, we're talking about that when we should be doing bread, shouldn't we? So into the centre, quite a bit of tension, and then into centre again, cause a bit of tension, and then I want almost like a V shape. So so you can just on a bit of flour and then roll it in there. Like that, and then that in there like that. That's a better one, isn't it? That's a better one. Right, let that go away. And then the last one. See, you don't need a fancy dough scraper, you just need a palette knife. Right. Bit of flour on top, bit of flour on my board. See, it teeters out when it's more at room temperature. It's just not as stiff, but a little bit more difficult to work with. So, but I wanted to see if we actually had it at room temperature, would it actually prove completely in the fridge overnight? So I wouldn't have to get up at stupid o'clock to kind of get it out of the oven early, get it out of the fridge early, and then bake it. So slightly tapered, and then we won't get I think that's it. I think that's the technique. So we're creating tension in the dough. That's better. And that tension is what's going to give it the spring. So two are going to go in the fridge, and then we're going to bake one as soon as it's risen. So that into there, like that, and then covers on, and then we'll see how we go. Well, this is certainly ready to go into the oven. Slightly might have overcruised a little bit. So we've learnt from our mistake. So straight razor this week. So it's just down to it just being really soft, isn't it? Doesn't that look messy? Not very proud of myself on that, but So here we go. Right, I'm going to spray a little bit of water on the cast iron pan that I've got in the bottom of the oven. So, 25 minutes. We'll see how that one turns out. Let's have a look. Well, that's a better size, isn't it? That's a better size. So, oven off. Need to get it out of the tin. Hopefully it'll just pop out. These are cake tins rather than loaf tins. It's just, I don't think the non-stick's a particularly good thing. I'd rather have something that was non-stick that I could, I mean something that was non-stick. That's what I mean. There we go. It's not so bad, is it? It's quite impressive. It's a bit heavy. It's a bit heavy. Put it on there like that. But it looks better. So I think it probably looks better because I've put more dough in it. So we'll let that cool. Still not 100% happy with the slices. It's got a nice crust on it. Sounds hollow. It's okay, isn't it? So we'll see. We'll let it cool and then we'll cut into it. And then we've got the other two in the fridge, so I'll just check on them. Yeah, they're just going to slowly prove over this evening and over tonight, and then hopefully just be able to bake them straight out of the fridge. Although the temperature will be different on the inside, so maybe that will be a problem. Maybe it's better off if they come to room temperature. I don't know. I think probably. Yeah, I think we'll see tomorrow. But my prediction is that it's best off to make the bread, let it prove, knock it back, put it in the fridge, let it slowly ferment in the fridge for 24 hours because it's a sourdough, and then take it out, shape it, put it in the moulds, and then when it's risen, bake it. I think that's going to be I think like I've done with this one, I think that's going to be the best thing to do with a sourdough. Normal bread's a little bit different. We really should have a go with what we call it, with fast acting yeast, and see what happens with that, with making loaves and things. But that's okay, isn't it? I'm quite happy with that. We'll see what it's like when we cut into it. Right, it's cool. Let's cut into it. That's good, isn't it? That's good. Smells good. And I'm happy with the crumb in it as well. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it needed to be cooked by itself. I think I was putting too much bread in the oven. So yeah, I don't think any kind of folding technique's gonna get any better at a folding technique's gonna get any better than that, if I'm honest. It's sourdough after all, so it tends to be a little bit large pocketed by default. Whereas I'll have to have a go with a fast acting yeast. So I'll have another go with fast acting yeast. The other problem with that is that the bread doesn't taste of anything. There's no flavour to it, if I'm honest. So with sourdough you certainly get a better kind of flavour. But we'll see what the other two. I'll have a look at. How's it? So they've been in the fridge, the other two. So not really risen. Not really risen. I'm gonna have to get up early in the morning and bake those 2 loaves of bread. They're not going to prove in the fridge overnight. So it just means setting the alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning and getting up, getting the bread out of the fridge and letting it prove at room temperature, and then baking it like 3 hours later, 8 o'clock, something like that. Yeah. I'll sum up my thoughts after we baked those other 2 loaves. We'll do the fast-acting yeast with the same techniques, folding techniques, and we'll see how that turns out. And then, yeah, I just need to have a go with the fast-acting yeast. And I did do an experiment where I put in some sourdough starter into some bread with some fast-acting yeast, and it worked. It rose quickly and had flavour because of the sourdough starter that I put into it. So the sourdough starter was there for flavour, not for the actual rising. The yeast in the bread, that was the job of the fast-acting yeast. The sourdough starter was just there for flavour. But I'm happy with those. I think, and these are £2 loaf tin, so you're looking at like 500 grams of what we call it, a flour per tin. I think that's about right. And then obviously there's a lot more water in a sourdough. What was it like? Yeah, because it was 1.5, didn't I? That's my workings out. Yeah, 1.5, and then you times the 1.5 kilos by 0.61, and now that's the ratio of water that you use in a sourdough. So then that gives you 915 grams worth of water, and that's okay. And that 500 grams included the weight of the starter and the weight of the flour in the starter, and that 915 included the weight of the water in the starter. So that's kind of how you kind of work it out. But anyway, yeah. So see what the other 2 bake like in the morning, and then I'll kind of I'll sum it up now, I think, and then we can just see how they are. I think if you're going to make sandwich loaves like that with sourdough, it's the fermentation that gives you flavour. So at some point it's going to have to be, you can't speed up the process, even though I could have done today. So we're in the middle of summer. There's bloody flies flying around. So we're in the middle of summer. So it proved in about 6 hours. So technically I could have probably had these made within like a 10-hour period. Fast-acting yeast would have taken 3 or 4 hours. You know, so the sourdough's slower, but still on a hot day it's faster. But you still need to ferment it. So I think my idea would be, for the best kind of result, would be to mix the dough, leave it for an hour, then knead it for 10. Well, if you know anything about sourdough, what you do is you mix the dough roughly together to incorporate all the flour and the water, and then the water has time to completely penetrate the flour, and then you can actually add more water to a dough that way, because the more of the water gets absorbed right into the flour. And then I'd leave it for an hour, and then I'd knead it for 10 minutes, and then I'd let it prove. I'm going to have to get that for you. Then I'd let it prove until it doubled in size. I'd knock it back. I'd stick it in the fridge for 24 hours, if not a little bit longer, and then I'd take it out, let it get back to room temperature, form the loaves, put them in the loaf pans, let it rise, double in size, and then bake it. And that's the way I'd do it. I think the way I'm doing it is because I'm wanting to bake it in the morning. I'm kind of like having a faff around, but that's the way I'd do it. That's the way I'd do it. So quickly, it would be to mix the dough, let it sit for an hour, knead it for 10 minutes, let it prove until it doubled in size, knock it back into the fridge for 24 hours to slowly ferment, take it out, shape the, let it get to room temperature and start rising a little bit, knock it back, fold the dough, put it in the bread pans, in the pans, let it double in size, and then bake it in the oven. And that's kind of how I kind of do it. The way I'm doing it's a bit of a silly way of doing it, but still, sourdough loaves. There we go, delicious. One seems to have risen more than the other, so let's get this one cooked, and let's give that one another half an hour and kind of see what happens. So hopefully I'll do a better job with my blade this time. Maybe it just needed a little bit more confidence. Right, that in the oven, and the spray of water. I've got it somewhere. And then we'll see how it turns out in half an hour. So, the other one's just about ready to come out, and this one's ready to go in. So, it's got nothing to do with the sharpness of your blade, does? Because these razor blades are razor sharp. Just in case of making sure that you cut through the outside. So that's that. Let's get that one in and the other one out. That's impressive, isn't it? So it only needs 25 minutes, so let's get this one out. It should just pop out. Oh, there we go. That's much better. Quite a nice rise on that one. See how the other one turns out. Let's have a look. Another impressive one. Another impressive one. Just get it out. Let it cool. And then we'll see how we'll see what they're like on the inside. But I think it'll be good. I don't think I need to make any more sourdough loaves after that. I could have just risen just a little bit more, just so it was that, but I didn't want to overprove it. But you live and learn, don't you? So, something to be said from taking something to its very, very, very limit when you're proving it. Let's have a look. That's good. I quite like the bigger holes. There we go. I think there's just slightly more dough in that one. That's why it's risen just that little bit more. So there we go. I don't think I'll make a better loaf than that, and I don't think I want to. Looks lovely. There we go. So yeah, I think I can. Well, I've summed up what I thought about making it. You still need to let it ferment for 24 hours, but you just kind of have that fermenting period after you've knocked it back for the first time, and then kept it in the fridge, and pull it out of the fridge, and then let it get up to like a room temperature, and carry on the process. And then don't put it back in the fridge to prove. Just bake it from that point once it's risen again. There we go. Yeah, well, I'm happy. I'll have another go, and we'll use some fast acting yeast. So we'll use a little bit of sourdough starter in some bread, in a dough mix, and we'll use some fast acting yeast to kind of see what difference that kind of makes. But there we go. Pretty happy with that.